On today's show, a look at the early over-unders, and I do mean early over-unders on the Hawks, the Lakers, and the Kings as it pertains to Atlanta's future. Plus, a look at the Hawks depth chart and much more, and all that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1772 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday afternoon here in late July. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And this summer, they're hooking us all up, every customer, with a boost or a bonus daily, something for everyone, every day, all summer long. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. Also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always would, to make us your first listen each and every day. Please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on Overcast, or anywhere you listen to podcasts on the audio side, as well as on YouTube. If you are interested in watching the show on video, please also like this episode if you are watching it right now, and please subscribe to the platform there, and also spread the word to your friends and family about the Locked On Hawks podcasts. We've had multiple shows already this week. I think this is like the fourth or fifth in the last 5-6 days on this feed. We're finishing up Summer League, of course, about a week ago. We had seven different storylines for the summer earlier this week, and then the latest news and some mailbag questions that I dropped on Wednesday. But now, again, it is Friday afternoon or so, and this show is fairly straight ahead. What we're going to get into on the show today is kind of the early over-unders from the folks at FanDuel, and then we'll get into the Hawks depth chart a little bit later on in the podcast, and then some mailbag stuff at the end of the show. But obviously, we're getting close to August. It is kind of the dead zone on some level, but there's the Olympics coming up and plenty of content, and I'll have some guests that I will be lining up for next week and beyond. But if you listen to the show going back to last summer and well before that, etc., you will know that I always do a multi-part series, usually with my friend Robbie Cowan of Dime, on all of the over-unders across the league. It's a good kind of excuse, good framing device to talk about each and every team in the league as we get closer and closer to camp, etc. And I'm still planning on doing that later on in the summer, but the over-unders are starting to come out earlier than earlier, I would say, throughout the summer, and our good friends at FanDuel put theirs up in the last few days. So I immediately got lots of questions about this from Hawks fans about what the Hawks number is, why it's that way, etc. And I want to turn it into a quick segment here. Even if I have full pronouncements, just for the record, I'll save a lot of that stuff for much closer to the season because, look, the roster might change. This is all kind of talking about what the roster is right now, but there is still plenty of time for trades and changes if that happens in the future. So nothing's set right now. And the whole league could also change things as well. Like if you start to have different teams get better and worse, to kind of adjust their numbers across the board. But all that said, the number right now at FanDuel for the Hawks is 34.5 wins. So if you're not into gambling that much, what it comes down to is it's a projection. Like they're allowing people to bet on whether the Hawks will win 35 games or more or 34 games or less. That number is 34.5 over under. For some background, of course, the Hawks won 36 games last year. And that was what they were kind of supposed to do based on their net rating and all those things underlying. So they were a 36-win team last year. So they'd have to be worse than that by 2 games to go under this number. And look, is that possible? I would say, sure, it's definitely possible. But there's some stuff to keep in mind here. Again, I'm not going to go super duper deep right now. But keep this stuff in mind. For instance, Trae Young missed 28 games last year, by far the most he's missed in a season in his career. Jalen Johnson missed 26 games. Okongwu missed 27 games. Pete Krejci didn't play till the end of the year, etc. I could keep going on this, but they had some injury issues, let's say, and some depth issues last year, and still won 36 games. But here's the big one that I will say. I think the reason people are projecting, in this case, FanDuel's projecting 34.5 wins for the Hawks is simple. It's that nationally, in a broad sense, people are looking at the Hawks record from last year, again, 36-46, and then saying also, hey, basically, wow, they traded their second best player, so they have to be worse. And then they stop. And I'll say this, the Hawks will miss DeJounte Murray in definitely some ways. He's very good at basketball. I'm not saying otherwise. They're going to miss him in some certain ways, for sure. I think the mainstream thought about how much worse the Hawks are going to be without DeJounte than they were last year is misguided because of what I already said before about how the injury stuff, Trae missing all those games, etc. But also, not to relitigate all this stuff, but last year, Trae and Murray playing together had a minus 6.5 net rating. which is like shockingly terrible for your two best players on the court when they're on the court together. It just didn't work. We all knew that now. I talked about it beforehand, after the trade, all that stuff. It just didn't work. It was basically the same net rating that the Hawks had with both of them on the bench. So in theory, the team quality of the Hawks last year was the same by net rating when they had neither of their star players on the court compared to both of their players on the court. That shouldn't happen that way. It isn't supposed to be that way. And keep in mind, this is a team that was built last year to have one of them on the court at all times because until Trey went down, they did a full stagger. So when DeJounte was on the bench, Trey was on the court, and so on and so forth. Of course, they did have Kobe, who was hurt most of the year last year. Trent Forrest is their emergency point guard, etc. If you go to cleaning the glass and pull out garbage time, they were, again, like minus 6.3 with both those guys on the court. But I say all that to say, with Trey on the court and DeJounte off the court, they had a plus 3.1 net rating. Now, that's not incredible or amazing or top 5 level in the league, anything like that, but it is totally solid for a team with its best player on the court and second best player off the court. That's a pretty normal number and a pretty encouraging one if you're looking forward to the team without Murray. Now, there are questions about replacing DeJounte's production, how it's going to go without him. How will the minutes go with Trey on the bench is a real question this year. Who will have the usage that DeJounte leaves behind? Some of that's going to go to Jalen, but how much of it's going to go to Jalen, etc. But I do believe the formula of Trae Young and a big and shooting around him has always worked to some level. It's not like we haven't seen the Hawks be successful without that big number 2 scorer in the background. Obviously, in the playoffs, the Hawks reacted swiftly to not having that guy in the Miami series a couple years ago. It led to the DeJounte trade, etc. But in the regular season, they've been a playoff level team with Trey on the court for multiple seasons now, whether DeJounte was there or not. So they do need more shooting in my view. I've said it before, but just to be clear, Jalen is dynamic in a way, though, to cover up some of that stuff in a way that nobody else has been able to for this Hawks team dating back to the pre-DeJounte days. Jalen is more dynamic than Collins was or Hunter was, etc. Also, I think people are kind of generally underrating the Hawks' talent level to have them at 34.5 wins. And I'm not saying they're going to win 50 games because they're probably not with this roster, but it could change course. I'll just say this, though. I'd be pretty firmly on the over on the Hawks right now if I had to choose. And I don't have to choose right now, but if I had to in late July, as people keep asking me like over under, I would say pretty firmly over. I wouldn't consider going under right now with where the Hawks are roster wise. And look, that could change too. They could actually sell off some parts. It could get worse. That's not impossible. But at the moment, I would be firmly on the over as of late July. Quickly here on the other over under considerations, the Hawks have draft considerations when it comes to the Kings and the Lakers. I'll keep it short here, but the Kings are at 46.5 and the Lakers are at 43.5 at FanDuel. The Kings are tied for 6th best in the West in projections, and the Lakers are tied for 9th best with the Rockets. As a reminder, 2 picks here. The Kings owe the Hawks a top 12 protected pick that could convey this year. The Lakers pick is unprotected completely. So what the Hawks are rooting for is the Kings to be a play-in team, basically, and the Lakers to be as bad as possible would be the greatest collection for Atlanta. So in an ideal world, the Lakers bottom out and the Kings get like the 7th, 8th, 9th seed in the West. That'd be a great combination. The Kings are generally projected to be right in that range. Like they're kind of what they were projected to be last year. Last year, they won 46 games. They were that kind of team. They added DeMar DeRozan this year, which definitely improves their offensive projection. Defensively, they may have got a little bit worse, but the Kings are kind of projected where the Hawks want them to be. A fringe playoff team in the West, a good team. I think they definitely got a little bit more safe as far as projection is concerned, adding DeMar, but that's a storyline we'll monitor throughout the season as to just like rooting for the Kings to be the 8th seed, basically, in the West if you are the Hawks. Then you have the Lakers. So, again, unprotected as part of the Murray trade, and the Hawks would like the Lakers to bottom out and then get some lottery luck and turn that pick into Cooper Flag, basically would be the ideal scenario. Is that likely? No, but it's conceivable. Even with AD and LeBron quite healthy last year, the Lakers won 47 games and had a point differential of a 42-win team. And at the moment, they did nothing to improve their roster for this year. Yes, they add Dalton Connect. It was an interesting prospect for the future, but as a rookie, is it going to help you that much? Probably not. They did very, very little. And, you know, the league's most popular team in the Lakers is projected to finish worse than last year by FanDuel, even with AD and LeBron back, because people are not stupid. They can see the underlying numbers and the fact the Lakers didn't do anything. So we'll come back to it a lot over the course of the next several months, but there is real downside potential for the Lakers given how top heavy they are. If anything happens to LeBron, the bottom falls out for LA, and AD similarly so. Maybe not quite as much as LeBron, but similarly. So we'll keep it to the over-unders for now, but they are projected to miss the playoffs right now. If you want the over-unders, the Lakers being tied for ninth is pretty encouraging for the Hawks because at the end of the day, Atlanta just wants LA to be as bad as possible. That really is true. But even if they're just like the 10th or 11th team in the Western Conference, that would be a fringe play-in team, a lottery team, and then you cross your fingers and hope you get lucky for the second straight year in the lottery. But that's a long way away. But just noting that right now, as for the projections, the Kings are projected to be better than the Lakers, which is where the Hawks want that to be. And we'll get into that much more as the year goes on. All right, we'll have more to come here, including a look at the depth chart for the Hawks later on in the show. But first, a word from our friends at FanDuel. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and summertime means baseball, basketball, and much more. You can bet it all at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and this summer, they're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus each and every day. That's right, something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Bet on all of your favorite players and your favorite teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and much more. The app is really easy to use at FanDuel Sportsbook, and they have all stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, and much more. The app is safe, it's secure, they cover the whole range of sports as well. That includes the NBA and win totals and future odds for the league, of course, WNBA stuff, Olympic stuff, NFL, college football, MLB, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, official sport betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, a question from Jesse for our next segment. And it says, anytime I see a Hawks depth chart on a broadcast or on a website, it seems insanely wrong to me. What do you think would be the depth chart right now with the current roster? Good question here from Jesse. There are two ways to kind of do depth chart stuff right now. I think Jesse's still asking kind of more about the one you would see on broadcast, like the traditional depth chart with point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, where you don't really repeat players. You kind of just line guys up in their best position, quote unquote. Personally, I wouldn't do it that way with the modern game and the way it's played, as we'll come back to in a second. But I do agree with Jesse that oftentimes the way that it's done on broadcasts for the Hawks or certain websites, etc., is kind of just wrong and broken and weird. So this projection, if I'm married to the 5-position projection, I would do this. At point guard, Trae Young, Kobe Buffkin, and Keaton Wallace on the two-way. That's the 3 guys there. At shooting guard, I would say Bogey, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci, and Garrison Matthews. At small forward, I would do like kind of co-starters with Risacher and DeAndre Hunter, and then Seth Lundy down the ballot there. At power forward, Jalen Johnson obviously is a starter, Mo Gay and EJ Liddell. And at center, the kind of co-starters with Okongwu and Capella, then Larry Nance, Bruno Fernando on the non-guarantee, and Cody Zeller. So hopefully that makes sense. There are some spots that are up for debate, obviously, on there. I don't think we know who would start right now, which is why I gave you the kind of co-starters at the 3 and at the 5 with Risacher, Hunter, Okongwu, and Capella. There are really only 2 guys who I would pretty much guarantee you are going to start, and that's Trae and Jalen. Everybody else is up for debate. I think Bogey's going to close a lot of games because Bogey's their 3rd best player, but he may not start because obviously he's a 6 man in a lot of different ways, was the best in the league last year, in my opinion. We don't know who's going to start at center just yet. Risacher, number 1 overall pick, but we'll see. And for instance, I think Bogey's the best 2 guard on the roster by a clear margin, but he might start. So anyway, that's my projection on the traditional side. But the other way is kind of group players by their archetype more than the like rigid 1 through 5 positions. And the way that I would do this personally is to kind of like group the guards together, then group like the wings together who aren't really power forwards or point guards. Then you have the forwards who are not centers. So basically like the forward line fully, and then the bigs. It's kind of the way that I would do that. You could even go even more simple if you want to, just go point guard, wing/forward, and then big. I'll give you kind of like 4 characteristics, but still it's kind of variable on some level. But if I did that, at guard, I would say the Hawks have Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Kobe Buffkin, and Keaton Wallace. On the wing, like the pure wings, I would say Bogey, Risacher, Vit Krejci, Garrison Matthews, and Seth Lundy. At the forward line, who are not like full bigs, I would say Jalen, Hunter, Mo Gay is like kind of in the middle. He could be a big, could be a forward, and then EJ Liddell are the forwards, and then the true pure bigs: Capella, Okongwu, Nance, Bruno, and Zeller. So some slight tweaks there, but hopefully you get the idea there. There are not many guys on this team that will not play multiple positions by the traditional standpoint. In fact, like for instance, Trey is essentially point guard only on this roster. You could argue that like maybe Garrison Matthews is like shooting guard only, but even then he could play some three along the way. Liddell is like probably power forward only, but even then he could play some small ball center, something like that. And then you have three center. I think Capella, Bruno, and Zeller are all center only. But most guys, just to list them quickly: Dyson, Kobe, Keaton Wallace, Bogey, Risacher, Veet, Garrison, Lundy, Jalen, Hunter, Gay, Okongwu, and Nance are all guys who can and probably will play multiple positions across the line. Like, just for example, Dyson could play 1, 2, 3. Kobe could play 1 and the 2. Keaton 1 and the 2. Bogey 2 and the 3. Risacher 2 and 3 probably. Veet 2 and 3. Garrison 2 and 3. Lundy 2 and 3. Jalen 3, 4, maybe even some 5. Hunter 3 and 4. Gay 4 and 5. Okongwu 4 and 5. Nance 4 and 5. There you go. So that's part of why I don't love the rigid positional structure, because like guys just play different spots. That's just what's going to happen in the modern NBA. And teams don't really think about the 1 through 5 as rigidly as fans do, generally speaking. Teams are obviously doing archetypes for sure. But for example, the 2 and the 3 are often like very similar in a lot of different schemes in the NBA. They overlap a lot for what teams are asked to do. It's about who you guard more than like which offensive position you're playing as well. Sometimes the 3 and the 4 are interchangeable in certain situations. Like, I just wouldn't be married to this guy's a 2 firmly, this guy's a 3 firmly. And yeah, I'll reference positions sometimes because it's just like an easy talking point to kind of group guys together. And I get people asking me like, and there are players that I think like have a natural position or a primary position, but they also do other things. That's just the name of the game here. There are, again, very few guys on the roster that are like truly one position guys. And most of them, beyond the Hawks even, most players in the league, unless you're a small guard or a true center, you are probably like multi-positional on some level, at least in a pinch. So it's a different topic altogether, but what I'll hit on probably definitively more in a couple of weeks is like what the rotation is going to be for the Hawks with this roster. Again, the roster might change, and I probably will dive into like what I would project as of late July, early August in a little bit. But there's lots of uncertainty there too. Like there are some locks to play, clearly. Trey, Jalen, Onyeka, Bogey, they're all going to play. I think Hunter is going to play if he's on the team. I think Capella is going to play if he's on the team, for instance. But those guys, they could be traded. Also, like how the Hawks are going to handle Larry Nance is going to be interesting to me. Dyson and Kobe in kind of a battle behind Trey in some respects. Like Risacher is going to play, obviously. But, you know, there's some questions about like backup 4. There's a question about backup point guard, depth questions. Like all that's going to be coming in the future. But for now, that's my 2 attempts at a depth chart. The more rigid one, and then the more like modern, flexible depth chart. And hopefully answers the question. It was a pretty good one, a pretty useful one to kind of reset the roster a little bit as of late July from Jesse. And by the way, questions, just to say this out loud before we move on to the next thing. If you want questions answered, you can send them to me a bunch of different ways. On Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks is the show account, at BT Rowland is my account. Also, you can follow me at patreon.com/BT Rowland and send questions there. Also, email the show, lockedonhawks@gmail.com. All those places are interesting to send questions, and I can't get enough of them. I may not answer them all on the show, but it always helps to have a stockpile, especially in these down months of the summer. All right, more to come on the show today, but first, a word from our friends at Gametime. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime, an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Gametime also helps you get your baseball tickets, basketball tickets, etc. faster and easier with last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest possible price guarantee. That all makes Gametime a fantastic option. It makes things easy for you in the ticketing space. I've been using Gametime for quite some time now. It's come in handy for me a ton when looking for tickets for the Braves, the Falcons, Atlanta United, as well as shows and concerts across the city and beyond. At Gametime, save big. When buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more, they have flash deals. You can save a bunch of money there, even save even more by choosing a section and let Gametime choose the seats for you within that section. They also have a feature that I really love. We actually toggle to show the total up front, no surprise fees at the end of the checkout screen. That's awesome for me to plan and all that stuff. Also get a panoramic review of these seats in the app, in the venue, before you buy them, and you are also getting the lowest possible price with the folks at Gametime. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with the folks at the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem that promo code. It is LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and before I get out of here, I will not go long on this, but I got a lot of questions in like a 24-hour period about Alex Sarr and kind of the fallout from Summer League and whether the Hawks got it right and got it wrong and all this stuff. I want to focus on Sarr for a second, kind of around Risacher too, but I wrote a little bit about the top 5 picks in the draft at Dime after the Summer League experience, and Hawks fans, I think understandably so, are taking a victory lap of some kind on Alex Sarr because he was very bad at Summer League, and it's okay to say that. He was not good at Summer League on offense in particular. I will say this, Risacher definitively looked better than Sarr in his 2 games. That contributes to that. Of course, on the other side of things, you could say Reed Shepherd looked amazing, and he went after those guys. So, like, it's very variable, and this is important to say broadly. I would always caution people to sort of against overreacting in Summer League in general. And doubly so for a 19-year-old rookie like Risacher, like Sarr. It's just too early. Like, the example that's the go-to, of course, is Trey. Now, Trey showed the playmaking chops that we wanted to see from him, but it became a national topic the way he was shooting and not making shots in Salt Lake City in particular his rookie year. That was a long time ago. Obviously, Trey became a star, so it looks even sillier now. So it's like a perfect example of this. And I'm not saying Risacher is going to be Trey because he's probably not going to be Trey, or Sarr's going to be Trey, but it's just silly to kind of overreact. Reacting is fine. Obviously, everyone's going to analyze what they see. There are takeaways to be had, but at the same time, you don't want to go crazy about Summer League in a small sample size. So on Sarr, and again, he's not a Hawks player, so I'm just going to say this quickly. Defensively, he looked pretty good to me, actually. I was in Vegas for most of his 4 games and saw him play live in person. He blocked 4 shots against the Hawks. He averaged a bunch of block shots. I thought he was pretty good as a rim protector. And defensively, and I said this a lot before the draft, if you listen to the podcast, I was already way sold on his defense compared to his offense. Like, his translation defensively is going to be a lot faster and a lot more effective. I stressed a lot pre-draft that even though I liked Sarr as a prospect, the offense is a work in progress. And that was definitely the case, but the defense could be legitimately awesome if it comes together. That's all true still at this point. But offensively, I said it before, it was really bad. He had an infamously terrible 0 for 15 shooting game. That happened. That was the worst performance of anyone offensively, shooting-wise, in all of Summer League. He shot 19% from the field in 4 Summer League games. That's horrible, obviously, especially for a 7-footer. And look, all the time they talked about like him wanting to be a perimeter guy on offense in the pre-draft process, that came to the forefront. He was just not interested in doing the big man stuff on offense. Part of that Summer League is like strange, but also his instincts are as a perimeter player offensively. So I am worried about the offense, but I already was before Summer League. I guess obviously he's probably worse than I would have expected. That's fair to say. But I've seen guys struggle in Summer League, and I'm just not going to have that visceral reaction that everybody's going to have. It was truly bad. I'm not picking on anybody for kind of reacting to it because it was bad, but you just don't change your evaluation based on 4 Summer League games. That's just the way it is. It was also very clear to me who actually watched Sarr as a prospect as far as like watching full games compared to just highlights. And the people who saw the full games were not as surprised by what happened as people that saw highlights. Like, I'm not picking on Hawks fans. Like, this stuff happens. We'll talk about Risacher a lot in the future, but I like what I saw from him too. It wasn't perfect by any means, but the stuff kind of that I wanted to see flash there. But I already had to laugh at this before the draft, and I mentioned that on the show. But there's this position that many took in May and June about how Alex Sarr was the only choice, and the Hawks were definitely going to screw it up if they didn't take him. That was silly then. It looks even sillier now, but that flipped in a hurry, and now like the same people are like, "Oh, he's terrible, bust." He was not a clear number 1 at any point along the way. I said that all the way through the draft process. Neither was Risacher, to be fair, but Sarr isn't a bum now, the way that everybody's seemingly saying. Risacher was fine. I think people are actually underrating Risacher. Like, I've read some national people that probably didn't watch as closely as I did because that's the nature of the beast. I cover one team as a primary. And Risacher, I thought, showed a lot, but he didn't shoot well. So people see the shooting numbers, etc. Not like Sarr. So he wasn't as bad as Sarr was, but I think Risacher was better than people are saying. I think Sarr was also better than people say because defensively he actually was good. Offensively he was awful. And, I get it. But Summer League is about development. It's not about forming your opinion and keeping it that way and like reacting crazily. So I know that's kind of broad, but as we kind of wrap up July in some ways, I just wasn't going to be as moved as other people were. Same with other Hawks guys on the roster. Like I talked about this a little bit at the end of summer league process from Vegas, and then when I got home. But like Mogay had a terrible first game, but he was fine after that. Played fine. Jurisic had some rough moments before he got hurt. Nothing to panic about there. Wallace was awesome. That's a positive for an older guy, but you don't want to go crazy on any direction. So I recommend that. It's going to fall on deaf ears, I'm sure. But yes, I think if you were someone who wanted Sarr before the draft, hopefully this is a little bit of a reset for you. But at the same time, he could still be awesome. I'm not ruling that out whatsoever. And it's important to remember at the end of the process, and some of this could be spin, but I heard this from people that wouldn't normally lie to me, that it was really between Risacher and Shepard for the Hawks versus Risacher and Sarr. Maybe that was because of the non-workout stuff, etc. But they didn't really have Sarr down to the end as a finalist, from what I heard. And Shepard looked awesome, but I made this point then. I'll say it again now. If you have Trae Young, it's harder to draft Reed Shepard. It's just the way it is. So as a tiebreaker or whatever, Risacher, I still believe is going to be really good. How good, and like he's not going to be a star, I don't think. That's okay. He doesn't have to be a star. We'll get into that much more in the future, but I will leave it there for now. But I got, like I said, a sudden wave of questions about Alex Sarr and him being a bust and Hawks fans being really excited about it. I get it, especially if you're a Hawks fan that lives in Atlanta. The fact that he didn't want to come to Atlanta is going to antagonize people, and I totally understand that. I don't have the visceral reaction. I cover the league, so it's a little bit different. But I do get it, and I'm sure people will be rooting against him for his whole career because he didn't want to come to Atlanta, and I understand that too. I won't be that way, but I definitely get it. Okay, we'll get out of here now. What's to come, though? Next week, I'll be back in Atlanta. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, maybe even the way that you're hearing it, you will know that I've not been at home this week. I've been traveling for my day job, and that's just the nature of the beast. And I'll be able to have guests again with better internet. So I haven't been able to have guests on this week just because of technical stuff. I will hopefully have some people on in the next week or so that are going to be joining me for some deeper dives on different stuff. Also, starting next week, I'll be paring back a little bit on my volume. The entire network on the NBA side and the Locked On Podcast Network is going to be going down to like 3 shows a week on average. I'll do at least that many, maybe even more than that if the content calls for it. But we don't stop on the show. I'll say this. Some shows go dark in the summer when like the true dregs. We don't do that here. I'll have content each and every week, 3 shows or more each week from now until camp. And then we'll go back to 5 shows a week and go from there. So if anything newsy happens, I'll wrap it up. But one more thing here before we sign off. There is basketball to watch in the coming days. I'm recording this podcast on Friday afternoon. On Saturday morning, Dyson Daniels is playing for Australia in a real Olympic game against Spain. Dyson's, by the way, been awesome in exhibition play for Australia, averaging like 3 steals a game, shooting it well, making a big defensive impact. He looks awesome to me. That's good news. And then on Sunday, by the way, Bogey and Serbia are playing the U.S. That'll be a game to watch. And then after that, Daniels plays 2 more games on Tuesday and Friday of next week. And then Bogey plays Wednesday and Saturday. Then we'll see about the knockout round. But there are at least 6 opportunities for people to watch a Hawks guy in a game that counts that they're going to be trying in for some, especially on Dyson as he becomes like more integrated into Hawks fandom, people watching him for the first time like in this new way. There are 3 chances to watch him. Bogey, obviously, everybody knows about, but is an awesome player, and especially in FIBA is going to be bombing away, etc. So stay tuned for that. I'm not going to cover those games like game by game, but I'll have some thoughts on Olympic stuff as they happen. Fingers crossed on Bogey's knees, of course, as always. But anyway, that's all I have for now. Stay tuned for all that. Please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you might find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. Also follow the show on YouTube where you can like this episode as it's happening right now before I sign off. Also, please subscribe to the show and enable your notifications there to be alerted when the show is going to be dropping, which is going to be happening on a frequent basis as the summer continues. Follow the show on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my written /extra audio work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I really appreciate you listening. Thanks for listening all week, actually, and enjoy your weekend. We'll see you all next time.